Besides, the king of the scoundrels is always at their beck and call. He is never out of earshot, and if at any time they are losing the battle, whenever possible, he comes to help them. For this reason, it has been said of him, the sword that reaches him cannot avail, nor the spear, the dart, or the javelin. He regards iron as straw, bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones are turned into stubble for him. Clubs are regarded as stubble. He laughs at the rattling of the javelin. Job chapter 41, verses 26 to 29. What can a man do in this case? It is true. If a man has full access to Job's horse, and has skill and courage to ride him, he might accomplish notable deeds for his king. About his stallion, it is said, his neck is clothed with thunder. He will not be afraid like a grasshopper, and the snorting of his nostrils is terrible. He paws in the valley while rejoicing in his strength. He goes on from there to engage the armed men. He mocks at fear and is frightened by nothing. Not even the sword turns him back. The quiver rattles against him, as do the flashing spear and the shield. He races over the ground with fierceness and rage, and doesn't stop at the sound of the trumpet. Instead, at the sound of the trumpet, he says, "Aha!" and is drawn to the scent of distant battle, the thundering of captains and the shouting of the battle cry. Do you give the horse his might? Do you clothe his neck with a mane? Do you make him leap like the locust? His majestic snorting is terrible. He paws in the valley and rejoices in his strength. He goes out to meet the weapons. He laughs at fear and is not dismayed, and he does not turn back from the sword. The quiver rattles against him, the flashing spear and javelin. With shaking and rage he races over the ground, and he does not stand still at the voice of the trumpet. As often as the trumpet sounds, he says, "Aha!" and he scents the battle from afar, and the thunder of the captains, and the war cry. Job chapter 39, verses 19 to 25. But for such footmen as you and I, let us never desire to meet with an enemy or promote ourselves as if we could do better when we hear of others who have suffered defeat. Nor should we entertain thoughts of our own spiritual manhood as better than it is. For those who think this way often suffer the worst when tested. Take Peter, for example, whom I mentioned earlier. He would strut. Yes, he would. Because of his proud attitude, he fostered thoughts of himself as being more than ready to stand in defense of his master compared to all other men. But who was more defeated than he was when these villains were on the attack? Therefore, when we hear of such robberies taking place along the king's highway, there are two things we should do. First, let us go out well equipped, and be sure to take a shield with us, for it was for lack of a shield that made it impossible for the hearty assailant of Leviathan to make him yield. For it is true that if we lack this weapon, he will not fear us at all. Therefore, one of the king's champions has said, in addition to all, taking up the shield of faith, with which you will be able to extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 16. Second, It is also good for us to request a convoy of the king, and that he will go with us himself. This prospect made David rejoice when in the valley of the shadow of death, and Moses expressed his desire too for dying where he stood, rather than to go one step without his God. Then he said to him, "If your presence does not go with us, do not lead us up from here." Exodus chapter 33, verse 15. Oh, my brother, if our king will go along with us, why should we be afraid of even 10,000 who plot against us? I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustains me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me round about. Psalm 3, verses 5 to 6. And on the other hand, without him, the proud only find refuge among the slain. Nothing remains but to crouch among the captives or fall among the slain. In spite of this, his anger does not turn away, and his hand is still stretched out. Isaiah chapter 10, verse 4. I, for my part, have been in the thick of the battle before now, and as you can see, I am still alive through the goodness of Him who is best. Yet I cannot boast at all in my own spiritual strength. In fact, I would be glad if I never met with any more such clashes, though I fear we have not yet passed beyond all danger. However, since the lion and the bear have not as yet devoured me, I have hope God will also deliver us from the next uncircumcised Philistine. Then Christian sang, "Poor little Faith has been among the thieves, was robbed. Remember this, all who believe, and get more faith. Shall a victor be over 10,000, else scarce over 3?" So they walked on, and ignorance followed. Christian and hopeful continued until they came to a place where another path joined with the straight way. The new path appeared to be as straight as the way which they had been following. So the two of them stood still, pondering the choice and not knowing which of the two to take. As they were thinking about the way, a dark man wearing a very light robe walked up to them and asked them why they stood there. "We are going to the celestial city," they answered, "but we don't know which of these ways to take." "Follow me," said the man. "It is the way in which I am going." So the two pilgrims followed him in the new way which had joined the road. A little at a time it curved until it turned them so far that they veered away from the celestial city. In a little time their faces were completely turned away from it, and yet they followed him. But by and by, before they were aware of the man's deception, he led them both into a net that encompassed them. They both became so entangled that they didn't know what to do. Then the white robe fell off the dark man's back, and they began to understand where they were. Therefore the two pilgrims lay crying there for some time, because they didn't know how to escape. Then Christian said to Hopeful, "Now do I see that I have been caught in an error. Didn't the shepherds urge us to beware of the flatterer? Today we have discovered the truth in what the wise man says. A man who flatters his neighbor is spreading a net for his steps." Proverbs chapter 29, verse 5.